Let me ask you a question. If you use After Effects or Adobe Premiere or whatever, do you use plugins and presets? Because I do, and there's a good reason for it. And today we're going to have a look at why.
This is how we do it.
Hey everybody, it's Shane here from waitingtobeseen.com, and today I want to welcome you to the latest edition of VlogStock Friday. In the late 90s, I did some business college, right? And at business college, we had to learn how to do some accounting. So we had to hand draw ledgers and do this and do that. After many weeks of doing things this way, they finally introduced us to a kind of new program that was called MYOB. All of us in the class, there were maybe 20 of us, were going, why on earth didn't you teach us this from the start? The reason, of course, is that you kind of need to understand why things work in order to get the most out of it. That's the thing with presets and plugins. Even though there's an absolute place for them, and I'm going to share with you one of the plugins that I've used specifically for my logo Sting. The cool thing is that if you know how those kind of things work and the reasons why they work, you can actually go in behind the scenes and kind of manipulate things and get even more out of it than if you were to just press a button and hope that everything works out okay. And so today I wanted to have a look at a plugin that I've used with After Effects for years and years. At the moment, Adobe currently are at CC 2018, and I've been using this plugin since Creative Suite 4. The thing is, it's a paid plugin, and because I've used it for so long and it's worked with every iteration of Creative Cloud, Creative Suite, so it was worth paying. I think at the moment it's currently 45 bucks, something like that. I'm going to show you what the plugin is. I'm going to show you how I used it for my Sting, and that's pretty much going to be the crux of today's vlog. Just sharing a little bit of excitement about how I do things, my workflow, and why I do it the way that I do it. And if that helps you, cool. And yeah, it's going to be a good day. So let's have a look. The first thing I want to do is just show you. I've got this. I've got Photoshop open actually, because that was my starting point. The logo. I needed to do something with it. I didn't just want it to appear on screen. I thought that from a production point of view, that would be a little bit lame. So I wanted to animate it. That meant I had to bring it into Photoshop first and foremost. And so here it is. I've got it in Photoshop, and you'll see down the side here under the layers, I've actually broken it into different layers. So when I first got it, it was just one chunk. I actually then manipulated it so that it has the upper hand, the lower hand, the lens, and the name are all in separate layers. They're all separate elements. So what I did was I took the Photoshop file and I imported it into After Effects. And when you say, yes, I just want to import it as a comp and preserve the layers, it does that. It actually gives you all of the layers in your composition, and then you can manipulate it to your heart's content, which is what I needed to do. This is actually now in After Effects, and I'm in the comp that I made with all of the different layers, and you can see them all here, the same names: lens, upper hand, lower hand, and name. And there's also one additional layer that I added, and that's camera, and I'll explain why I did that. The first thing that animates is the lens element. It zooms into the screen, and I wanted to have some depth of field. So it's exactly like this camera that I'm talking to right now. If I put my hand here, my hand's out of focus, but my face is in focus. And that's because there's some good depth of field. I wanted to mimic that when my lens zoomed in on screen. So I needed to put in a camera so After Effects knew how to interpret that move when I moved it in that kind of space. Of course, I then needed to move the hands because they're like this, and I wanted them to. So I had to change the positions on both of those. And if I hit position P for both of those, you can see I've got some keyframes just showing where they animate in. And one thing that I will just point out, on each of those layers, those three layers, the lens, the upper and the lower hands, I've actually added a little bit of motion blur. I checked the motion blur box because that then gives it a little bit more of a natural feel as it's moving. And you'll see if I jump to this final keyframe, they're actually still a bit blurred. So if I go to the next keyframe, then it's gone solid again. And that's just because it gives you that nice feel of genuine motion. And that is how I animated those key elements. But then I wanted to do something a little bit special with the name, waiting to be seen. And as we move forward in the frame, if I zoom out a bit here, come to the 2-second mark, and the name waiting to be seen has this little blip It's almost like this little glitchy RGB kind of thing happening. And it's really possible to do that layer by layer, line upon line. If you multiply the layers out, if you make one blue, one red, one green, if you add some different expressions into it, you can get that look to happen. I didn't do that. I just used a plugin. And that plugin is from a company called Copilot. You may have heard of them. This is actually the site for the product. And like I said, you actually have to pay for this particular plugin, and totally worth it. Absolutely worth it. Look, this, I love this because the promo that they use for Twitch is still the same one that they used when I first bought the product. So I'll just turn the volume down because it's a bit loud, but here you go. This is it. I don't think I need to play the whole thing. You can see some of the elements that are it's, as they're unfolding there, and I'll just stop it there. They've got this description of what Twitch actually does, and it says here on the website that there are 6 built-in operators. Sky's the limit with what you can do with this. There's keyframes, and you can animate in all kinds of different ways, shapes and forms, and it's really, really dynamic in that sense. So you can change blur, color, you can change light and scale, you can do sliding, and you can adjust time. So they have these 6 operations that are built into the plugin. Now, if we jump back to After Effects, when I click on the name layer in my logo layer here, and then click on the effects control, you'll see I've got it right here. It still says Twitch, and that's because Twitch is at play. Now, if I click on the expand arrow here, there's a bunch of different options. The first 2, amount and speed. You've got the little stopwatch, so you can animate those, you can change them, you can keyframe them, whatever you need them to be. I won't touch them, and I didn't touch them. I left them as default because I wanted to animate within the expressions themselves. And the first thing to note, if you go to the very last drop-down menu, operator controls, you'll see those 6 control functions that were listed on the website are there. Blur, color, light, scale, slide, and time. But interestingly, only slide is available to choose. All of the rest are grayed out. And the reason for that is because under enable, I've only ticked the checkbox for slide because that was the only thing that I wanted to use for the logo, okay? So if I was to click on blur, for example, you can now see the operator controls for blur are fully available for me to use. But I didn't use that. I just wanted to use slide for the logo, and that's all that's available. You can see that there are 2 stopwatches selected. I've actually created keyframes for just 2 of the functions. I wanted to make it really simple for myself while still being effective. And if you come back down to the name and then press UU, you're going to see all the way down here, these are the keyframes. Okay, so there are actually 3 keyframes that I've done. Slide amount, the first keyframe is set to 0, then 3 frames later, I've actually set that up to 50, and then 3 frames later, that's back down to 0. And I did the same with the slide twitch itself. I actually went from 2 to 5, back to 2. So it's doing this ramp up to reveal the slide and then a ramp down so it disappears. Because if you don't do that, it's just going to be jittering and sliding all over the place the entire time. So you need to keyframe the animations into effect. And one of the other things that I did was this here option back up in the effects tab, the effects control, is slide RGB split. Now if we come to this second keyframe, if I increase that, you're going to see that that's affecting, that's the further I increase that split, the more the red, blue and green elements pull apart or slide, because that's what this particular effect is. And I think I had it on 34 there, which was really cool. That was enough. It gave enough movement for me to be happy. I didn't need it to be much further than that. The other thing is that I took this value, slide spread, which is a default higher than 0, because the spread actually does what the name says. It spreads that side to side. I didn't want that. I wanted it to just be a vertical rather than a horizontal movement, and so I reduced that value to 0, and it meant that when it did its glitch, its RGB glitch, it just glitched up and down. And And the rest is history. As far as making the logo is concerned, that is how I animated that. Now, some of you might be going, okay, but this is on a black background at the moment. If you know After Effects, then you know that there's a little function down here that toggles the transparency. And if I do that, there you go, you can see that actually the thing is transparent. Moving over to Comp 1 then, this is where I actually assembled the whole sting. So you can see at the top there, we've got the composition layer full of the logo elements that have been animated. So that's all ready to go. Underneath that, I've actually got two solids. There's a white solid because basically all of my branding is the blue sitting on white. It's on the website. I wanted it to be in the animated logo for all of my videos. It's on the business card. That's just the look that I wanted to go for. So I needed to have the animated logo sit on top of some white. And because it glitches at the end to nothing, I needed to have black. So I needed to include that black solid. One of the things that I did was I sourced some audio just because I enjoy the show. I like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I wanted to animate it and tie it a little bit to the sound effects, particularly the sound effect that I used at the end. And that sound effect at the end is the police radio, just doing a kind of effect, a static effect. If you have a look then, all the way at the top, if I hit U and then zoom in a little bit, you're going to see that here are all of the elements that I've actually keyed in and are at play. So the first thing to notice, actually, if I come all the way back to the start, is that I've got scale and I have opacity. Those things are moving. So I've actually got the scale going from 80% down to, I think it's 75% by the end of the video. Yep, there you go, 76%, close enough. And then I've also got some opacity at the beginning. The reason why I needed to increase opacity from 0 to 100 over as the video introduced is because the logo comp is at 2000 by 2000 pixels, and this one, because I did it at HD, that's obviously a lot smaller. So I needed to create a frame, a masking frame, blow out the feathering on the side so that when it moves in, it smooths through. And it looks nice and buttery. You don't notice that it's a hard hand suddenly. So it just moves through nice and smooth, and that's why it's there. Jump then to the end of the clip, and you've got two more sets of keyframes. You've got some more slide because I've added a twitch effect to the entire comp now, not just the layer, not just the name layer at the end, but the entire comp. With these particular keyframes, I've actually just ramped it up. I started at 0 and then I go to the end up to 50 for the amount, just because I wanted the motion to be there. And then I actually cut the frame altogether. I cut that layer and it goes straight to black. So basically what happens is you get the sound effect and you get that jitter, you get the RGB split happen, and it cuts at about the same time. And I just wanted to do it that way because I thought it looked and sounded good. It was a nice marrying between that static sound and a little bit of a glitchy kind of effect. So that's why that's there, that's why it's happened. If you hit the space bar, it'll just do a bit of a RAM preview. So it's just building up some of those layers. And now it'll play through.
That's gonna leave a mark. What?
Okay, so you've got the initial logo elements and the animation from that composition, and then you've got the final composition elements as well that just jitter out at the end. And it's really quick. I think I only did it over 6 frames, which is about a quarter of a second. It's not as though it's a big time-consuming process where I really wanted to make it obvious. I wanted it to be there. I wanted it to be subtle, because subtlety, I think, goes a long way in production. People notice the subtle things if you do them well, and if they don't notice, that's all right as well, because from a production point of view, you know that you've put it in. You know that you've made those little things that really just elevate the overall product. And so that was it. That's my logo sting, and with those audio sound bites, actually, that's my outro sting in particular. The interesting thing is that if you know how to use a plugin and you know how to use a preset, then there's absolutely a place for it. Even if you don't know how to use it, there's probably still a place for it, but I would encourage you to learn why that works. It's the same thing, I think, with color grading, with lookup tables. If you apply a LUT, that's fantastic. It's a really simple and easy way to get a colored look. But if you actually understand why it makes it that way, then you could go into the background of that and tweak it and actually make it exactly what you want it to be, rather than just somebody else's preset or somebody else's plugin. So I use this plugin, like I said, I've been using it since I had CS4, and it's been great. It's a mainstay and something that I come back to time and again. And the reason I do that is because I understand how it works in the background, and I'm able to manipulate it the way I need it to be manipulated, rather than just applying something and hoping that it looks good. And when you're making video, really, you need to be thinking about things by design and not by default. You need to be thinking, how do I want this to look, rather than I'll apply this and I hope that it looks good. Play around with plugins, play around with presets, but can I encourage you to not let those presets and those plugins simply be the only things that you have in your toolkit. There's a place for it, and if that's how you roll, that's fine, but I'd encourage you to try and delve a little bit deeper. Use plugins, use presets, but get in there, get under the engine, as it were. It's VlogStock Friday. I'm so pleased that you came, you joined me, and I was able to just share a little bit of passion about my work. If you liked the video, then hit the like button. If you liked it even more, then subscribe to the channel. Comment below, let me know. If you have any thoughts, if you have any questions about Premiere Pro or After Effects or Photoshop, then give me a shout out, and I'll see what I can do to help you. And there you go. That's all I've got to say about that. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
That's gonna leave a mark. What?